Okay, so thank you for that, which I'm sure was a very kind introduction. And thank you very much for the invitation and for having me. So I thought I'd share a little bit about the SEB's experience of dealing with disruption, of working with transformation. May I continue by asking you here in the room, how many of you consider that your company is currently during some sort of transformation phase? You may officially have a transformation program, a digital transformation program, or some sort of, you're recognizing the world is changing and now we need to take certain actions. Hand up how many of you would say you are currently in some sort of a transformation journey? Big, small, a little bit. I think more hands are coming up as I'm talking here. See if I'll keep on for a bit longer. I'm sure there'll be more hands in the room. Can I ask you, how many of you think you kind of figured it out? You kind of know now how you transform a big corporation. Anyone who raised their hand kind of want to keep their hand up? You have. Fantastic. You and I, we're seeing each other outside later on. I'd love to hear the recipe. What I thought I'd share is how we at SEB are dealing with this, how we are working with the industry that is disrupting, that is financial services, and how we are working with transformation. And I love the inspiration that we got from the previous speaker, because all of these things make so much sense. Make these decisions quick. Don't wait for all that information. You've got to try things. You've got to experiment. You've got to fail fast, and you've got to try things. They make perfect sense when they're on a slide. But they are, and at least in our experience, they are difficult to execute in reality. In an organization that's been around, how many here has a company that's been around for more than 10 years? Hand up. More than 20 years? More than 30 years? Yeah, so we're talking about 50. We've been around for 150 years. So we're kind of used to doing things in a certain way. So then completely doing something in a completely different way does not necessarily come naturally. So when we're working with disruption and transformation, these are the kind of things that we need to think about. And the vision is exactly to try and get to the pictures that we saw previously on the slide, but recognizing that we're coming from a point that is slightly different. So what I thought I'd share with you then is sort of how we've been making our way through that journey. And let's back up a little bit to November 2015. That's when we launched what we call Vision 2025. This was our, let's call it the starting point of the SEB kind of transformational journey that we're still on. And this was probably, if I'd put a point in time when it started, this was it. Prior to November 2015, there's been a frantic amount of work going on in the group executive committee, in the management team of the organization, thinking about what is happening around us. What do we need to do to react to this? What do we need to, how do we need to do differently? Do we think it is a big change, or do we think we can kind of muddle through? So nearly a year, I would say, of kind of working in a group of around 15 people, a lot of external influences, a lot of debating, and then kind of crafting this vision, saying that we want to deliver world-class service to our customers. So having worked for a year, we felt like we've done a bit of work. Of course, we hadn't even started. Now comes the beginning of starting to work with the organization and drive towards this vision. But before we could even begin, we had to be very, very clear on one particular question. Which one do you think? What is the first thing that people are going to ask us? Okay, we're doing this big thing. This thing is, we're going to transform ourselves. Why? Why do we need to do, why? We're doing all right, no? We're doing all right. We have reasonable profitability. We have good customer satisfaction. We have good employee satisfaction. Why all this transformational stuff? And without really landing in this question, without having a clear answer on this question, it was going to be tremendously difficult to convey a message to the organization, to install a sense of urgency in the organization without being super clear on why are we doing this. So we kind of started to get a little bit of sense of urgency into the organization by turning around to our good old friend Bill Gates, who kind of spelled it out for us. Banking is necessary, banks are not. Okay, fair enough. In this new day and age, banks are not necessarily necessary. Banking is. So we had to really ask ourselves, is it really the case? Is it so that we are at the risk of extinction if we don't act? Is it that kind of level of sense of urgency that we need to install in the organization to make sure that we actually take the leap, initiate and get to exactly those points that we had our previous speaker talk about? Well, we started to look at the facts. So we said, is our industry genuinely and fundamentally changing? Well, let's look at how we meet our customers. This slide shows you how our customers, this is on the private and SME side, this is how we meet our customers. The different chart shows you the different channels. The internet bank visits are fairly flat. People are in the internet bank, they have been, they'll continue. Sometime around 5 years ago or so, we started to see more mobile logins than we saw internet logins. And since then, that's just kind of taken off. Physical visits into our branch network on a downward trajectory. Inbound calls to our call centers, well, fairly stable. So this is actually what's happening now. This is not something that may change at some point in the future if new technology allows people to do things differently. No, it is happening right now. And we right now have more visits in a mobile app every minute around the clock than we have visits into some of our branch network branches in a week. So the market and the customer base has kind of told us that there is a movement going on. So this is a very clear indication of the first and probably most important starting point. What is the customer behavior looking like? And I should tell you that you cannot do nearly as much in the mobile app as you can do in all the other channels. So it's not like the readiness, it's not like we're providing a lot of services that you cannot do in the other channels. Quite the opposite. You can do much less in the mobile app. Still, that's where we are seeing a tremendous drive. So customer behavior is really changing, not sometime in the future, not maybe, but now. In addition to that, the regulatory environment is changing. And these are regulations that some of you who are in different industries will not have to deal with, but you have your regulations. All regulations that we're seeing right now is driving towards increased transparency, towards increased mobility, towards increased openness. So everything is trying to create a more level playing field for players in the industry. And that's what's happening. These are new entrants into the marketplace. They have seen this customer behavior. And they said, hey, there's something going on here. People like to do their bank in the mobile app and in the digital channels. And by the way, all the regulations are opening up for new players to come into the market. And all of these players, some of them, I'm sure you have seen some of these before. Some of them are global, some of them are European, a lot of them are Nordic. And these are players who were not on this slide 18 months ago, who we are now genuinely considering competition. So this slide really helps us to create that why. Why is it so that we believe that something's going to have to change? Why is it so that we cannot really kind of cramp ourselves together and hope that everything is just going to go away? So we're sort of the really realization and message to say that this transformation is happening of our industry. That's why we need to change. So if we're kind of comfortable that the why is there, or at least for the management team, and then it's about communicating it, but for the management team, the view was strong, the why is there. Then comes the next question, the how. So how do we do this? My big how right now is how I'm going to get through my slides in the 17 minutes, but that's my problem. So how? And then I would like to quote a book called The Innovators Dilemma. It was not one of the books that the previous presenter showed, but I saw a lot of you took pictures of his books. They are great for startups. I think the one you want to read if you're an existing business is The Innovators Dilemma. I would like to add that to the list. This is the essence, and by the way, there's a 25-minute audiobook version with a great summary for those of you who don't like reading as much. That's the one I went for. So the fundamental of a business, according to The Innovators Dilemma, is very fundamental. Any business has its resources. If you're a small business, there might be a few people who get started, and we saw an example of that previously, and then you grow over time. You have your processes. In the beginning, they're super light. Over time, you need to have some sort of processes, otherwise things kind of go out of hand. And then you start creating your values. You need to have a purpose of what you're doing, and the bigger you get, you need to be clear on that. And eventually, you start building a culture. There's a culture building around this. And you get better and better. And I'm sure all of you get better at working with your resources. We as a bank, we feel that with the capital base that we have today and the cost base we have today, we have never been as efficient as we are today. We have people who have full-time employees in the bank to map our processes and make them better. We work with our processes every day, and we get better and better. And we keep crafting our values, we keep looking around us in the world, and our culture evolves around it. We are really good at what we do, and we get better and better. Unfortunately, this model is less suited to deal with sudden change and disruption. It's excellent at dealing with these small changes. I think Johan made a very good point initially when he said how fast, what is the speed of this transformation with the chess player and the robots. When something comes in that is just completely different, it's not about tweaking and twisting what you have, it is some sort of disruption. And then you really need to be honest with yourself. Is my industry disrupting or not? That's a very important realization to make. So if the industry is disrupting, then keep twisting and tweaking these things may not actually get you to where you want to be. That's where the need for that transformational speed becomes greater. And the analogy that somebody made, he said, how do you beat Tiger Woods? Well, you don't play golf. Right? So what these guys do, they don't play our game. They beat us, but not really on what we do. They beat us on something else. And that's what the new players are doing in our industry. And that, I think I'd be very interested to hear what the situation are in your industries. So this is really the how. The how is, it's not a little bit more of the same. It's not a little bit better at what we do. It's something different. It's more of a fundamental change that we need to try and install. And the answer is not, oh, so we need to change everyone at the same time in one go, and one morning we just come in and we just throw everything old stuff up into the air and we do something different. That's not how an incumbent transforms. And there is really no clear answer on this, but this is, I think, where every institution, every company has to find their way of transforming into this environment, if indeed you believe that your industry is disrupting. So for us, the question was what? Okay, so if we kind of believe we have a good why, we kind of want to be around for another 150 years, and we think there is a genuine reason that our industry is changing so much that we need to respond to it. If we have an idea that how it's not just a little bit more of the same, it's going to have to be something different, then we need to ask ourselves the what. What is it that we can do then? What are the actual practical things that we are able to do? So I thought I'd share a few of those examples. The first thing we did was really to kick off the whole thing and to get things going was then to start. And I'll go back to what I said initially. We were 15 people in a room talking about the Vision 2025. That had kind of been, people had heard about there was a Vision 2025 work going on in the organization, but what does it mean? Where does it take us? What does it do? None of that had been communicated. So we started in November 2015. And what you see here is a picture of an event where we effectively invited the entire organization. We are 15,000 employees in SEB. We couldn't fit 15,000 people into a room. It would be practically difficult to bring everyone together at the same time. But we gathered about 3,000 people live. And then we gathered a lot of people remote. And then we did a lot of documentation, a lot of filming, and things that we shared afterwards. This was sort of a kickoff for Vision 2025. But by no means the end of it, but very much sort of here's where we start talking about what is. And this was the first time really that the organization got some concrete things about, why are we doing this? And the focus at this event was primarily the why. And then started the work around how do we then get from the why, from our conviction that things need to change to actually starting to see the changes happening, and also involving and including the organization. So we were trying to visualize the goal and say, this is what we think the world looks like, this is the direction we want to be heading, but we do not have all the answers. So we have to co-create that roadmap. We have to together agree on, okay, if we're here, if we agree that we're heading here, what is it that we need to do? So a lot of involvement and engagement to the extent that we could. And also be very honest about the fact that we do not have all the answers. Now, there are things that we will not be able to answer, and there are things that we don't know, but we're trying to be open about that, and we're trying to have very open dialogue in the organization, so not to pretend that, oh, the senior management, they know. So we just ask them what the world is going to look like in 5 years. No. But we think we have an idea where things are heading, but we really need everyone in the organization to contribute and participate with forming and crafting this roadmap. And then we invested in a program which we call Boost Your Service, which was effectively working with all employees to work around the concept of service. So our vision was to bring world-class service to our customers, so we then need to talk about service, educate in service, work with service, and make it very, very practical and tangible. And then keep communicating at every opportunity. To this day, when we start talking about like a new initiative in the bank or a investment, we tend to start with a why. So why are we doing this? Why is this industry what is this happening in our industry? And then kind of keep reminding ourselves why we're doing everything that we are. And then to the comment of the previous speaker, you need to have a budget and you need to have a room for investment of exploration and experiments. Allow ourselves to do that. And it's not necessarily something that comes naturally and easily for us. So it's something that we need to train. So I thought I'd share a few examples of things that we then try to do to practically get this going forward. This was my attempt to try and counteract the Bill Gates quote. It's fantastic. If you put a quote like this and your name, adds a lot of, it's like, I said that. So that's a cheap trick if you want to use it. We just say, look, we need to create a bank that customers want, not just that they need. So if the message is the world doesn't really need banks, but they need banking, well, our job is to make sure that they want our services, to create that world-class service that the customers want. This was really trying to, again, show the vision and the target rather than saying that this needs to be done in this way. We don't know how we're going to get there. We don't have the answers, but this was one attempt to try and articulate what the direction was. So let's go through a few of these examples. This is a branch outfit in the central of Stockholm. And those of you who've been into a regular traditional branch network, you might see it looks a little bit different. This was a starting point of really asking our customers, how would you like a branch experience to be? So this space was created together with 40 customers, private and SMEs, where they gave their input. This is how we would like to be met. This is how we would like the environment to look like. These are the kind of services we want to do. You have so many other customers. Why can I not network with them? Why don't you bring more events? And most importantly, opening hours. This one is open from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening and open on Saturdays and Sundays. It was not the typical branch opening hours, at least not in Sweden. So just trying it out together with our customers. And the point of this one was not to say that let's do a big analysis and ask ourselves, where do we put that branch office, how it's going to look, do all the research. And maybe back to the point that was made by the previous speaker, not waiting for that 90% information, but acting and saying, we think branches are going to look different. Let's try. Where can we get going? Oh, there's a location here in Stockholm. That's going to empty. The lease is expiring. We can do something. Okay, let's just go there and do it. So from decision to this one opening up took about 10 or 11 months. Not light speed by any standards, but a little bit light speed-ish for us. So we kind of got things going fairly quickly, and now this is a hotbed for taking these things out into the organization. You see the tables there, they have kind of folded iPads into them. This was our assumption, the feedback from clients, you don't want somebody to sit on the other side of the desk and they have all the information. You stand side by side and you look at the information together. These are now in, I would say, 15 to 20% of all branches in Sweden now have that in them. They haven't redone all the branches, but this was one of the features that really worked, so we brought it out into the organization. But it would never have come up had we not tested it, and we probably never would have said that, okay, let's refurbish all our branches and put in those. So it was, for us, a new way of working. Here's another one. Let's try it. People say that banks is not always where we are. Well, let's try and be where people are. So we built this mobile advisory unit, We thought mobile banking is kind of already taken, so we had to come up with a different name. Mobile Advisory Unit. And this was really an attempt to try and go, I wouldn't say that it's been a smashing success. It's been all right. But it's also, let's try it. So let's not do all the research before we paint the bus green and put in the computers and go out and try it. And we did. In some cases, it's worked really, really well. When we are in university cities, when people are subscribing for the, opening up in their universities, that's when it works well. So this is another example. Another one is trying with digital chatbots. Aida is our digital chatbot. She's not fully developed. She doesn't know all the aspects of all the languages in which we operate, but let's try it. Let's see how it goes. Try it internally first for internal requests, and then roll it out externally and try it. And that's what we've done. Another example is the fintech community, the startup community in financial services. That is typically portrayed as a challenger. You saw all those names to the right of one of the first slides, all the new entrants. Here are those that we have actually invested in. So we've partnered up with a number of them and said, look, we like what you do, so we take a stake in you, we invest in you, and we use your technology to the benefit of our customers. So these two gentlemen run a company called Tink. This is our mobile app today. These functionalities are powered by Tink technology. So for us, we saw a great service, Tink, we liked it, we talked to the company, we got to know them, we invested in them, we got their technology, and we handed it to our customers. They are addressing our customers, we are addressing our customers. But our view was that if this is what customers want, then this would be a faster way for us to actually getting it to them rather than reinventing our own digital channels. So finally, SEBx. What is that all about then? Maybe some of you have heard about X-type initiatives or X-type organizations. For us, it's another tool of transformation. So if we started back in 2005, we launched our innovation lab. How many in here has some sort of innovation lab in your organizations? Some sort. You capture innovations within the organization. Then we started working with something called rapid process digitization, kind of finding particular processes and digitizing them. Agile way of working, implementing that at scale in the organization. Developer portal opening up so that external players can come in and work with our data. And then most recently, SEBx. So what is that all about? Well, this is really one tool, and it comes back to the why. And apologies for this graph being a little bit scientific, or I'd say academic. There's been a ton of research made into what exactly all of us in this room are facing. Incumbent, well-functioning organizations dealing with change. It's been done at universities, it's been done by professors. And then they come in and say, okay, so there are different tools that you can use as you are transforming an incumbent business. Here are different types of tools that you can use. And they said, but in the circumstances where the fit with the organization at the present is quite low, and in the event where the fit with your processes is quite low, so basically we're talking about disruption, in those circumstances, use a focused team in a separate spin-out organization has been successful in a fair amount of cases. So it's hard to drive from the line organization in some cases when you're really dealing with something completely new. It is hard to align with existing processes and structures when you're dealing with something that is completely new. So the idea is to say that what if we take all the knowledge we have about our industry? What if we take all the competence that we have in the organization, and if we assign a team and we put it outside of our structures, our processes, our infrastructure, and we say, okay, just see what we can do and explore. That's the theoretical background. There has been a fair amount of those done in the financial services industry. There has been a fair amount of those done in the airline industry. We've seen low-cost competition. We've seen it in the telecoms industry. We've seen them in the travel industry. So we have seen these type of initiatives popping up. So for us, this was yet another tool. So what I did, I stepped out of my job as divisional head of one of the divisions of the bank, corporate and private customers. And as of just before the summer, I started what we refer to as SEBx. So I went physically and put myself in a room, roughly the size of this stage, with a team of 7 people. And we started and we said, okay, so here we are. We now have the mandate to challenge ourselves, try new things. You know, we know what our industry is facing. We see all these new competitors. We see all these new developments. So what would we like to do in the kind of cross-section between the strength of the incumbent, the new technology, and the new trends? And that's where we are operating since May. And it's fascinating to see how fast things can move when you're working like this. But one of the biggest challenges is making sure that, for us, our experience is making sure this is not something that is going to alienate from the rest of the organization. This is something that we think will drive transformation for the whole group. If we find exciting technologies that can be used in banking, if we find exciting partnerships that can be leveraged on, if we find good business opportunities in new markets, that of course is something that we should share with the organization as a whole. But the way of working in the SEBx team, which is now growing, and we're now hiring actually both internally and a little bit externally for some of these competences that we're now sourcing, we don't have internally. So as we are working our way forward, we run into those challenges and we'll try and work and solve them from a completely different perspective than we otherwise would have had in the line organization. So it's yet another tool of trying to drive transformation. And you know, no guarantee that this is going to succeed, no guarantee that we're going to be here in a year and there's something fantastic coming out of it. But I would say that just so far, it feels like the progress that we have made in working like this has certainly really opened up a lot of eyes, both within the organization and externally, of how we can do things differently. Because some things we don't do differently just because we have never done them that way, and some things we don't do differently because they can't be done differently. But everything that we kind of can challenge ourselves, we try and do that, and we'll do it in the format like this. So those are a few, and I'm not saying that our transformation journey has found the formula, so I'm still looking forward to all the right answers. But it's something that has taught us a lot, and we're on this journey going forward, and we're super excited about it. And I'm happy to take any questions or reflections from your side. Thank you.